Most men get really caught in the warrior energy in life, and it costs us greatly. So one of the things that many of us don't do in relationships is we don't speak up, right? And when we don't speak up, then we don't show up. And so we have to learn how to speak up, but we got to do it skillfully.
But it's one small thing that if men understood about women, it would make their relationships easier.
Man, I mean,
welcome back to another episode of ENHEARTENED. And today I have a guest that when I tuned into your universe, your world, Bryan, what came up was the energy of someone who is really thorough in the way you approach the things you devote your heart to. I spent the last few days on your blog just receiving everything that you wrote in there and immersing myself in your writing, in your books, and in your personal story. And maybe that's where I want to begin. First, it's an ultimate pleasure that you decided to join me on the show. And I just want to start with that. What I feel like right now, even in this moment, I am in the presence of a reader. I feel like you're reading my energy. You're reading where I'm bringing the conversations, the questions that I'm bringing up. Okay, what is coming up for you as I share all of that?
well, first off, I just feel deeply honored, man, by your willingness to come into my world in that way, right? And I've been doing this a long, long time, and I was one of the first like bloggers, man, back in like 2000. I started blogging, I think, in 2000, I don't know, 9 or 10, 8, 9, 10, something like that. And um so I've been doing this a long time. And when somebody like you takes time to really dive into the world that I've shared, it's really touching, man, and I feel honored by it. And Xavier, when you invited me too, definitely, man, I'm look, I'm of two minds when it comes to reading people, because on the one hand, I think we definitely get first impressions. On the
Yeah,
other hand, I know better than to necessarily trust them.
yeah,
you know you don't really know someone until you know them, and that can
yeah,
take a long time.
yeah.
And I just want to say, man, you what I see is a beautiful man with big eyes and a smile and a lightness, and I mean, you call your podcast Enheartened, right? So you're a man who is really seeking to get to matters of the heart, and I can tell that from you, and you exude that. So for me, man, it's also an honor to be here with you today.
Man, I received that, and it means a lot for me to receive that from you because I sat with your depth before even writing the invitation, and I was like, there is I feel like for the last decades, men have been going through a transformation and initiation that is asking of us to bring forth archetypes that we never even believed
Mhm.
we would
Right.
need
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah.
And I feel like this conversation has the potential of at least giving direction to
Mm.
the men who might be listening to this, and also to the women who crave to understand more of the men in their lives and how to work more harmoniously with them. So, yeah, I just want to express genuine gratitude
Yeah.
for having this conversation. And the
Yeah.
first question I wanted to, if we're going to get into the nitty gritty of things, the first question that I wanted to ask you was basically I've seen you going through many phases. It's like there was a Bryan that was involved in the military, and from what I've understood, in your mid 20s, you decided to leave that path and embrace more of spiritual introspection, like really looking more for what is really meaningful to you at the very least. And I also sense this feeling, there's precision to the way you write. There's precision to the way you put words out there, to the ways you've written your books.
Yeah.
And I want to have more of a sense of that sniper of the heart energy that
Mm.
you seem to
Mm.
carry. I want to make room for that. What
Mm.
does that bring up for you?
Well, I'm 50. I'll be
Hmm.
51 in 13 days actually.
Yeah.
And I was in the military. I went into the military when I think I just turned 17 when I started
Wow.
training. I went to college, I went to ROTC. I honestly, man, I knew immediately that the military was not for me. But I was locked in for what would become a 10-year journey because of they paid my way through college. I got a full scholarship from the Air Force, that was the only way I was going to school was through a scholarship, just financially. And so I knew pretty quickly that the military wasn't my soul's calling. And but choosing on some level at 17, I mean, what choices was I making? Or 18? Yeah, I was making a choice, but I was young and stupid, meaning I didn't know what to do with my life. I didn't have any good, true, real mentoring from nobody. I mean, my dad was just gone on his own adventures. He wasn't present at all for what to have the conversations I needed to have to really help me find myself. Um, so I just kept going, and by the end of that military experience, I was in so much pain that I was shut down. I was in so much pain that I just shut myself down because it was too painful to be doing something that felt so disconnected from soul, from heart. And so when I got out at 26, I felt dead inside, man. I was just dead. Like I was a zombie. I couldn't I couldn't cry, right? Which a lot of men can relate to that, but you know what else? I couldn't laugh either, Xavier. I couldn't laugh, man, not really, you know? And I think, a lot of men may be able to relate to that in the sense of like I could laugh, but it was all neck up. I couldn't laugh with my full body, with my full being. And that pain created a hunger in me. I mean, I already had the hunger in my 17 when I was at college. I was the guy that like would put quotes up on my walls. This is in 1995, man. There's no social media. There's no YouTube. There's no email is barely getting started, barely. And I don't even think it had started yet. I think it started like maybe my third year in college where email became kind of wide, started to get more available. So I was the guy cutting things out of magazines and putting quotes on my walls and just my big ambition for life and for inspiration. But boy, the next 10 to 15 years were a painful path that I walked now looking back on, I'm grateful for it. But it really it set the stage for me to not walk what was then the typical path. Go get your
Yeah.
job, make your money, get your house, get your wife, have your kids, build your 401k. Like I knew, at 20, at 22, that I wasn't going to walk that path. So, man, it's been a long journey with many, many iterations. Even getting out of the military was just the start of a whole new journey I had to go
Yeah.
on. Even now, man, at 50, I'm at the precipice of a whole new chapter in life
Yeah.
that also has been painful in birthing.
Yeah. It definitely feels like you are still walking many lifetimes in the same life.
I heard a friend of mine say years ago. He's like, "Look, we in our world, in the coaching world, the transformational work world, like there's this idea that you've got to get out of your comfort zone,
Yes.
right? To really live a meaningful life." Well, here's the truth about that. It sounds great. And there's, especially when you're younger, you have this notion that I'll get out of my comfort zone and I'll transform and then everything's going to be awesome from here on out.
Yeah.
Well, you know what a life lived outside of your comfort zone feels like? It's fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like relentless discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's scary, it's painful. It's because that's growth. It's like there's this great quote like to the acorn, becoming an oak tree looks like utter destruction,
Absolutely.
right? So that's what comes up for me, man. And
Yeah.
when you
And
say
I
those things,
want to I love that so much, and I want to check into what are the moments. I think we have these moments that are more than moments, there are portals, there are
Mm.
initiations,
Mm.
and I'm pretty sure you have many. And I've read
Mhm.
in your book at some
Mhm.
point, there's a moment in your book where I think back then you were 36, which is my age now, going through a brutal breakup. Um, and I think that was probably one of the many
Mhm.
wake up calls to a more conscious life. So, do you have some of these moments? And also, how can a guy right now who
Mhm.
has been navigating a, let's call it a disconnected life and taking it as normal, can begin to negotiate these moments to find his own path?
Yeah. Yeah. Great questions. And I think, if, to a man listening, if a man's listening to your podcast, they're already asking bigger questions, right? Then the world around him probably encourages him to ask, and probably encourages him to not ask. Right. So, that man's already taking the first step, listening to conversations like this. Um, yeah, man, I've had, I've had, I've had many of those initiatory moments over the years that, the dark nights of the soul, right? We've heard that language as well. These, I call it, I also call it the chasm. Like there's a crossing of a chasm, from a place of safety where you're comfortable, safe, you're making your money, you have a job, maybe you're even in a relationship that feels safe. Um, but you're in a circumstance, you've shaped your life in such a way, and there's a part of you that's wanting to grow beyond that into some new iteration of yourself. It's so normal to not want to do that. It's so normal to want to stay in your safe zone. That's our brains are programmed for survival. Our brains aren't programmed to help us evolve as a soulful being. No, our brains just want to keep us alive long enough to procreate into the next generation. But um, and for a lot of people, that's they're content on some level for that. Honestly, Xavier, to some degree, I sometimes am envious of those people that don't want to live a growth filled life. Now, there's a lot of shadow there, and the bigger part of me doesn't want that life. Um, and though I get the allure, you know. So that's the first thing. I mean, just you're asking the questions, listening to the podcast, and I think one of my one of my I think one of my most essential practices over the years was honestly was following my curiosity. Following my interest, following the things, following where the path seemed to be lit up, where every other direction I looked there was no compelling calling. And that, for better and sometimes worse, um, has made all the difference. That's taken me to the confrontations with myself, with truth, with authenticity, with love, that I don't think I would have confronted otherwise had I just, played it safe.
I love that. There's something you said there that I find really meaningful. And what I've heard you say is there are these questions that your environment is probably almost
Mm.
nudging you not to ask.
Mm-hmm.
These
Yeah,
questions that people around you are probably afraid to ask themselves, and they are telling you
exactly.
not to ask as well.
That's right.
And like a beginning point for many men listening to this, or anyone listening to this, would be, what are these questions that I crave to have an
Mhm.
answer to, but that I'm
Mm.
afraid to ask? Maybe because it's going to take me on a
Yeah,
journey of
yeah,
transformation that scares the living shit out of me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the most fundamental, simple questions you can ask is essentially, am I living the life I really want to live right now?
Hmm.
Like, are the choices I'm making, are these the expression of my, like the highest expression of my soul, of
Yeah.
my heart? If you can answer, yeah, actually, yeah, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but yeah, I'm a father. I love the hell out of my wife. It's not a perfect relationship, but it's solid. I'm doing work that I love. I love the home that we're building. Again, nothing's perfect, but man, I'm all in. Beautiful.
Yeah.
But if you come back with an answer like, shit, truth is, nah, man, something's off.
Yeah.
Even if I can't really put my finger on it, something's off. Like, I'm not meant to be an insurance adjuster for the rest of my life, or there's something deeply, deeply off about our relationship. And maybe there's conversations we're not having, or there's a way of relating that's just not at all healthy and nourishing. Okay, now you have a string to start pulling on. It's like a
Yeah.
thread to start pulling on that, right? If it's profession related, okay, man. Well, that's now you have another question to ask yourself. It's like one question just leads to more questions,
Yeah.
right? And I think a life well lived isn't one lived in conclusions, but one lived in ongoing questions.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Like
We,
Steve Jobs, sorry to just make this last point. Like Steve Jobs was famous for saying he would look in the mirror every day and ask himself, do I love what I'm doing today?
mhm.
And he may not say yes every day, but so long as he's saying yes on more days than not, okay, man, that's a good path to keep walking.
Yeah. Yeah. There is, I would love to ask, what is your take on what I perceive as some men's growing emotional disconnection? I definitely see a dual movement. I see more and more men being like, something is fucked up and a change is needed,
Mm.
and I'm going to figure this thing out. I don't
Yeah.
know necessarily where to start, but I've got to start somewhere. I got to figure something out. I'm going to start asking these questions.
Yeah.
And I also feel that so many have just chosen resignation,
Mm.
especially in the collective.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
Yeah.
like many men are confronted with this collective spirit almost that is whispering, "You not enough for what, quote unquote, these times are asking of you."
Mm.
I feel like
Yeah.
many men that I've worked with are dealing with a certain, I don't know, this internalization to a certain degree. So I just want to have your take on what do you think is at the root of that growing emotional disconnect, especially for those who tend to just resign, kind of like giving up.
Man, I get it. The world is overwhelming. And today, because of the internet, we are exposed to more of what is going on the planet than ever before. We're not
Yeah,
supposed to have all the information we have, Xavier. We didn't evolve to know about all of the attack that happened in what's that place in the Himalayas that 23 tourists were murdered just the other, and
mm,
Kashmir, right?
yeah,
Just a week ago. And now the growing tension. We didn't evolve to have that kind of information on top of all the elections happening around the planet, on top of, what the president is doing in this country, on deportations, on top of the war in Ukraine. Like, it's fucking overwhelming
yeah,
to know all the things that we know. And I think it's very tempting. And I wrestle with this myself. Like, I've written a few books. I think I do good work in the world. And on some level, it's easy to believe the world is still going to hell.
yeah,
Nothing I've done. I'm a huge fan of Jon Stewart. I think Jon Stewart, what he did with the Daily Show and exposing just the silliness and the insanity of a lot of the political going ons and yet it's still going on.
yeah,
He's exposed it, but it ain't changed anything as
yeah,
far as I can tell. So I think I understand the temptation to just say it doesn't matter. Nothing I do
yeah,
matters. And you know what? There's something really liberating on the other side of that, because I think it's actually true. In the long scheme of things, nothing I do matters.
mm,
But on the day to day, everything I do matters to my wife, matters to my clients, matters to my mom, matters to my sisters, matters to you, Xavier, in this conversation.
yeah,
How I show up every day has impact on the world around me. Now, it may not stop America from descending into tyranny, but it's going to help you and I hopefully our conversation, the way that I'm showing up inside of this is going to have you go back to your fiance, to your family and feel a little bit better. You're going to be a little bit of a more, uplifted man because of our dialogue. And me too, by the way, because
Yeah.
of your presence, because of the gifts that you're bringing to this conversation. I'm going to go back and have a conversation with my wife and say, man, babe, I did a podcast with this guy. Just, he was so sincere and he was honoring, and man, I feel lighter. I feel good. Right. And my wife's going to feel that. And the ripple effect, again, it may not change the trajectory of the history of the world, but it's going to matter to my wife today and to your fiance today and to who, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I love that. Would you say it's a great exercise to ask the men who are listening to this right now to go in their lives right now, and to take stock of the impact of their energy in the world around them, and to literally with an open heart ask,
Yeah.
their friends, partners, spouses, children, how is my energy affecting you? When do you feel the best around me? When do you feel the worst around me? If somebody is really dealing with this almost nihilistic view of the world, would you say that's a good practice they can embrace right now to begin to see that, hey, the way I show up really matters?
I'm a huge fan of getting feedback from people around you. One of the most impactful moments in my life was when a friend of mine, he was actually another men's coach that I was facilitating retreats with. This was, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. He called me one day and he just said, and he knew he could give me this feedback. We had an open channel. And he said, Bryan, I just want you to know, man, every time you come to my house, you talk with my wife, you never ask her any questions about her.
Mm,
You never. You talk about yourself and you don't really check in to see anything about her. And man, that pierced me.
yeah,
That pierced me. And I didn't take it as a criticism. It's not a judgment on my character. It's my family system. My family sucks at asking questions of each other. Everyone's talking about themselves. It's not a narcissism so much as it's like we don't know how to be curious.
yeah.
And my friend giving me that feedback, what I realized, oh my God, man, every time I hang out with him and his wife, she doesn't feel seen by me.
Hmm.
And I get how lonely that is because that's actually in my family. I don't feel seen by my family. And then here I am recreating that in the world. So, oh man, it was a revelation. And I was
Yeah,
so grateful. Right. And that taught that set me on a path of really learning how to practice curiosity with
yeah,
people because I don't want people around me to feel unseen because I know what that feels like. And it's painful.
yeah,
So I think getting feedback from the people around you about, how I show up, how does that impact you? I think
yeah,
that's a courageous and can be very vital, transformative practice for a man
yeah,
to take on.
yeah. It's like leading with an open heart and being like, okay, I'm here to receive how you see me.
Totally,
Yeah,
exactly. And I care about you. I want to show up in a way that has positive impact on you. And if I'm doing something that doesn't, I want to know about that because
yeah,
I care about our relationship.
yeah.
You said something, Xavier, early in our conversation already about archetypes, right?
Hmm.
There's like the world, um, there are archetypes that especially our intimate relationships, I think we're expected to energize, to exercise these archetypal patterns in us, like the lover, that historically we actually haven't had
Yeah,
to exercise. And I
yeah,
think I really love that you touched on that, because what immediately arises for me, you're talking about men checking out, men sort of resigning. I think there's a we men. Oh, and the disconnect. You talked about the disconnect.
yeah,
Do you know who Terry Real is?
yeah,
So Terry Real said something, I think profound, that the original wound in men is disconnection.
yeah,
Right? As boys, we are taught to disconnect from our bodies, disconnect from our feelings. We're taught that our bodies are something to be ashamed of. Don't play with yourself. Don't touch yourself. Only girls cry. Don't be a girl, right? Don't be a sissy. All those and worse. So we're taught from a young age to disconnect from what's really happening inside of ourselves. And what then that leads to is men tend to uh, we tend to prioritize warrior archetypal energy,
Yeah.
right? I'm just going to be a warrior. I'm going to go kill it at work. I'm going to kill it on the sports field. I'm going to, kill. We even use warrior language. I'm going to crush
Yeah.
whatever it is. I'm going to crush it, you know, and and in our disconnect, that lover archetype goes underground,
Yeah.
and it tends to come out in addiction, whether it's a porn or drugs or alcohol or video games, right? It comes out in these other places, or it goes underground. It doesn't come out sideways, but it makes us sick. It
Hmm.
robs us of our vitality altogether,
Mm.
right? We're just functioning robots. I mean, so many dudes, and that's what I was coming out of the military. I was a robot, all warrior, zero lover energy. Literally, I was in the military. I was a soldier. That's what they do. They turn out warriors. They don't turn out lovers. That's not the
Yeah.
domain of the military, and it's not the domain of our culture.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just love that you spoke to that.
There's something so I find paradoxical and beautiful about it. And you wrote an article, I think, I don't know when. It's you cannot be king until you embrace your
Mm,
feminine something.
mm,
I might
yeah,
be butchering the title. But what I'm
yeah,
hearing is men craving the energy of the lover, and at the same time, they
yeah,
don't feel safe fully
yeah,
bringing that forth.
yeah, yeah,
And in our own ways, we try to get that from the external world. We expect of that. We
yeah,
expect to receive that from the women in our lives, or
yeah,
mothers, or partners, spouses, girlfriends, sometimes even female friends. But finding that within ourselves, and even trusting that it is available in our male circles.
yeah,
I mean, it's really, I remember for myself just trusting that
mm,
some of my deepest vulnerabilities would not be mocked by the
mm,
men in my life, because
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I was brought up with two other brothers, and
mhm,
our love language was to just tease each other to death, to to
yeah,
mock each other to death.
yeah,
And the things that were deeply vulnerable, no, we wouldn't bring it to the guys. We would try to find another place for that, or bury that. So
mhm.
how can men reconcile that paradox? Deep cellular craving of the lover, and they are terrified of expressing
Yeah.
that within themselves.
Well, first question: do you and your brothers still communicate that way?
Oh, it has changed deeply. It has changed
Oh, good.
profoundly. Yeah, my
Oh,
older brother
beautiful.
is 38, my younger brother is 34, and the relationship has changed powerfully.
Uh,
And the capacity to just name the struggles
mm,
has stretched and expanded. And
mm,
again, they might not be on the same path as I am,
yeah,
because both of them, they live in Africa. That we took different paths, but
yeah.
they are more and more curious about the work I do,
Mm,
and more leaning towards we actually need to
wow,
support each other instead of
dude,
just berating and teasing each
that's
other.
that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful here. Yeah, because it's rare that brothers go along for that ride together. It really is rare, at least in my experience. I work with a lot of men who have brothers, and they still have, they're in their 50s and 60s and still have that antagonistic, competitive relationship that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And they can't trust to have real conversations with them, or if they try, they get shut down, or like you said, they get mocked.
Yeah.
So, that's rare, man, especially all three of you. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I like that.
I
I
would
like
say
hearing.
my first personal development book was given to me by my older brother.
Mm, mm.
And so
So he
there
led
was
the way.
that seeker of truth to a certain degree was
Mm,
there. And
yeah,
then yeah, we've had to find our own ways to reach healthy respect for each other.
yeah, yeah,
And that took years, that took
yeah,
decades to
yeah,
even get there.
yeah, no doubt.
But yeah. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of men's groups. I'm a
Hmm.
big fan of men's groups. And there's a lot of different kinds of men's groups. I like to use this word trustable
Hmm.
men's groups. There's magic in men gathering with other men in a trustable way. A lot of men, we turn to women to
Yeah.
have, we'll have female friends where we can kind of talk about the things that we can't talk about with other men. Of course, we censor ourselves with women too in those early stages because we don't want to look like idiots to anybody, especially not to a woman. But for a lot of guys, it's easier to talk to a woman about things that you'd never talk to a guy about.
Yeah.
Um, so I understand that. I spent many years with having mostly female friends and a few guy friends here and there, and mostly not trusting men.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I think at 39, maybe it's about 11, almost 12 years ago, I went to my first men's retreat. I didn't even know that was a thing, and I was blown away. I had never been around men in that way. I mean, I had gone to lots of transformational workshops and retreats and things like that, but they were always 90% women.
Yeah.
So there might be a couple guys there, and sure we'd connect, but I didn't really, we're still surrounded by women. And this was the first time, except when I had been in the military, when
Mm.
I was just immersed in a sea of men in a way that helped me really come forth into my vulnerability, into my authenticity, where all of me was celebrated, and um and I was challenged, but in ways that were respectful.
Yeah.
And that's why I think men's groups can be so valuable. Look, we men need challenge. I want to be challenged. I
Yeah.
need to be challenged. If I'm going to rise to my best, the challenge does that. But the way most men challenge each other is really shitty.
Yeah.
We talk shit. We try to cut each other down at the legs. We inspire competition that way. But man, honestly, that's that doesn't
It's
often feel good.
it's dirty fuel.
Dirty fuel. That's a good way of putting it. I like that's dirty fuel. That's a really great. That's a great metaphor. It is dirty fuel because
Yeah.
it'll get you going, but it
Yeah.
clogs up the system.
Yeah.
It leaves deposits in your system that
Yeah.
cause arthritis, that
Yeah.
cause you to shut down, and you bring that back into your relationship with, if you're partnered, you bring that to your spouse, and it's gunky and messed. Maybe you won the game because you rose to the occasion, but you bring that bitterness back to your wife and your
Yeah.
kids.
It
So
damages
that's a
the
really good. That's a
engine.
really good metaphor.
Yeah. It damages the engine, damages the heart. Yeah.
And so finding a good men's group of men that are doing personal growth work. I work with men one on one, and I work with men in groups. And there's just a different magic in a group that I think working with a therapist is a great idea. I'm a fan of it. I have a therapist who's an older man intentionally.
Hmm.
I work intentionally with an older man because I need that elder mentor energy, as I think all men do.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's, the men's groups that I lead and I stand for, that word trustable is so vital because we want to challenge each other, but we need to do so respectfully in ways that don't rob each other of our agency.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is describing the difference between shadow form of brotherhood and a really, I don't know, a heart-centered brotherhood maybe, because it
Mm-hmm.
feels like in the military you experienced a more, I don't know exactly how your experience was, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can share more about that. But I certainly know what shadow brotherhood feels
Yeah.
like for me,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
from
Uh-huh.
being with my
Yeah.
siblings, where you feel
Mm.
like not all of you is welcome here. Okay, so
Totally.
there are
Yeah.
some parts that you have to tidy, push away, and sometimes we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
poke each other, mock each other, kind of little things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else that you see, let's say a guy right now is shopping for
Mm-hmm.
brotherhood, and how
Yeah.
can he distinguish between more of a shadowy vibe of brotherhood
Yeah. Yeah.
and a more heart-centered? Because I really believe that when we are not,
It's a great
when we
question.
don't have the proper landmarks,
Yeah.
you might find yourself going look for an Andrew Tate version of
Totally.
masculinity and putting
Yeah.
that on a pedestal,
Yeah.
instead of something that might be more heart-centered. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just
It's
gonna.
a That's a great question. Xavier. I think a really great question and vital. Let's look at the Andrew Tate version of masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
I call that an adolescent heroic expression of masculinity. It's not a that's not a that's and the hero, by the way, is the adolescent archetype of the adult warrior, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the hero is always trying to prove himself. He's always trying to be the one who wins the game, gets the girl. That kind of language. If you come into my men's group, I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to make you more money or you're going to get more women. There's no heroic aspect to the work that you're going to do in my men's groups, for example.
Yeah.
I'm also not overly pushing the warrior. There's a lot of that, again, Andrew Tate version of masculinity. I wouldn't even say manhood, because it's not
Mm-hmm.
manhood. He's a flavor of masculinity. But let's make another distinction between adolescence and adulthood. Adolescents don't take responsibility for anything. They're
Mm-hmm.
off, trying to figure out who they are. Adults take responsibility for the impact of their actions. I heard this great idea in the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, that which is a book on the masculine archetypes, that as adults, we take responsibility even for that which we are not responsible.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot of, again, men's work out there where guys don't want to take responsibility for their
Mm-hmm.
impact. It's like, I'm a man, I'm alpha, I'm free. I heard one leader in that space during the pandemic encouraging people to do some really irresponsible shit. And the thing that he said is simply, freedom is as freedom does.
Yeah.
What an immature thing to say. What an anti-relational thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Freedom is as freedom does. So in other words, like, just go be your free self. It's so anti-relational. Talk about, again, like mainlining the warrior. That's
Yeah.
all warrior energy. There's no relational lover energy inside of that. There's no question of, well, what impact is my behavior having on other people? And
Mm-hmm.
that is, again, a very adolescent approach to life, psychologically speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
My book, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her, that work is very confronting, especially to men at
Yeah.
first, because I am inviting men, I'm challenging men to take responsibility in ways we never have before. And a lot of men, and I understand this because I experienced it too, but a lot of men are still very much in the victim mindset of things. Like, what do you mean take responsibility? Do you understand what a bitch that woman was to me? Do you understand how bad we men have it? How the how the courts favor mothers and dads get thrown off to the side, and my wife, she was so disrespectful, blah blah blah. And I get it. I understand. I've been in toxic relationships with women that were really unkind to me, and that's putting it kindly, downright cruel. And though, if I stay in that mindset, I'm just staying in my wounded little child
Yeah.
version of myself,
Yeah.
right? Rather than, am I asking the questions, what's my role in this? What is my role? I won't take responsibility for what is someone else's responsibility, but I'm going to take full responsibility for what is mine.
Yeah.
And I think you want to look for, men's work, men's programs that encourage that almost paradoxical dance. I think that's a good thing to look out for. I remember years ago seeing a man who was very successful as a in the men's world, and he was all warrior all the time.
Mm.
Like, just, you go to his website and it was like, even some of the images he had, man, it was like, I don't know, 100 men in a group dressed in black is almost like a freaking army,
Yeah.
literally like warrior.
Yeah.
In warrior culture, people don't stand out. Everybody looks like the leader, looks
Yeah.
like you're all wearing the same uniform. And I remember just being really turned off by that, because there
Yeah.
was in his work, there was very much, again, that same freedom is as freedom does. A man takes what he wants kind of thing. And I think I think what we men have to learn, what I think is a sign of maturity, is actually the capacity to embrace opposites. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not untrue. I mean, freedom is as freedom does. A man is captain of his own ship, sure. And though, you know what? I'm also in partnership with life. I also have to be checking in. Well, what are the impact of my actions on the people around me, on my
Yeah.
wife, on my friends, on the people who come to my Instagram page? Am I just inciting people into hatred and violence and antagonism? Okay, maybe I ought to change my content a little bit. That's not the world I want to live in,
Yeah.
right? So I think mature men's work kind of can hold both.
Yeah.
It's and I think the internet is still overwhelmingly adolescent. It appeals to the adolescent's black and white simplicity of things.
Yeah.
Adult conversations are nuanced.
Yeah.
They don't make promises that um, you can't keep.
Yeah.
Life is going to have hard seasons. I call my programs Elevate, right? But a lot of the work that we do in Elevate is we do descent work.
Yes.
We go into the shadow. We embrace and sit with this pain and the suffering and the seasonal nature of life.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a long answer, man. But
I,
I
I
mean,
I love
you're
all of
asking
that.
great questions. You're asking
As
great questions.
Thank you. But there's a distinction there that I hear you say, and I will try to find my own ways to express it. But what I hear you differentiate between is the warrior and the conqueror. Because the way the warrior itself is such a vast archetype. It's such a
Mhm.
potent archetype. And the
Well,
conqueror is that taker. It's like, I am gonna get on your land and I'm gonna take your possessions. I'm gonna maybe even take your mind, and I'm gonna infuse my ideas, my ideology to you. It's like, that's like, I'm gonna conquer
yeah.
you, quote unquote. And I really feel like we are invited to, and also from what I'm receiving from you, it's like this invitation to mature the warrior inside of us, that is maybe shifting, instead of shutting down the heart, making sure that the heart stays open regardless of what comes at me. It's like a
Hmm.
new task, a new job description almost that is given to the warrior. It's like, instead of shielding myself so completely and just going about life making sure that I gather, I gather, I'm going to make sure that I engage with life in a way that doesn't, it's like protecting the open heart, not by I'm looking for the words to express it.
Well,
Protecting
that's
the
your.
heart, not by shutting it down, but by making sure that it doesn't get shut down, by making sure that it can remain open. And yes, I can have strength and a spine, and I can also have that loving essence alive within me and not repressed under the rug, something like that. That's
Well, that's
kind of
well,
what I'm
that's
hearing you
well,
say.
that's you're talking about the influence of the lover archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Right, the warrior and the lover, they live on a spectrum of sorts. On the extreme end, you have all warrior. On the other end, you would have lover. For example, like the warrior, you said, is all about boundaries. Cut, he's got his sword, so he can kind of keep whatever he needs to at sword's length. He can
Yeah.
cut the heads off of whatever offends him. The lover is the opposite. The lover has no boundaries in that extreme, right? There's shadows of each, the warrior and the lover, right? The warrior has, like you say, has the conquering energy, where I'm either conquering externally, I'm sadistic, I'm practicing a sadistic kind of external focused domination for the
Mm-hmm.
sake of power. But then there's the internal focus of that, which becomes masochistic. I'm dominating myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? I am suppressing myself. I am colonizing my own self,
Yeah.
suppressing my feelings, getting them to be a certain way that I want them to be for the sake of it. So, but a healthy full range man has access to both warrior and lover energy. When the lover throws off its boundaries and is like, "Oh, yippee, I don't want to go to work today. I just want to, lay in bed with my wife and cuddle and make love." The warrior says, "Look, I get it. Get your ass out of bed. Let's go to work. You can, do that tonight. Send her some text messages throughout the day. We got work to do. We
Yeah.
got heads to chop off." And so, I think but most men get really caught in the love in the warrior. energy
Yeah.
in life, because
Yeah.
the world demands that of us. It demands us to be productive. It demands us to make money. It demands us to do all those things. And we don't have a healthy relationship with our lover, many of us.
Yeah.
And so, and it costs us greatly. But I think that's
Mm.
what it is. Protecting the open heart is it's the dance of the lover and warrior together.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
like not one letting the other win, but right. So both being
Yeah.
in a dance with each other.
Yeah. Would you say from the work you've done with men, you see many men equate intimacy with a loss of autonomy?
Oh yeah.
And how can a guy listening to this
Yeah.
reconcile both?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, man. The freedom, one of the
Hmm.
things that it's ironic. Men go into relationship thinking it's going to be the most free they've ever felt, because here's a woman who, just heterosexually speaking, here's a woman who lights them up. They feel alive, the first couple months, if you're lucky, certainly the first few weeks, first whatever. You feel alive, you feel liberated. The way she looks at you, touches you, fucks you, holds you, all the things, like, oh, I feel bigger than I've ever felt. My
Yeah.
heart is, and then the human things enter. She has sensitivities. She wants different things than I might want. I don't know, I can look like a million different things, where all of a sudden the fantasy that I just fell in love with now becomes a human reality, and it
Yeah.
has limitations. And, this is a fundamental tension that happens in every relationship. And one of the things that, the reasons I loved the title that I came up with for my book, Choose Her
Yeah.
Every Day or Leave Her,
I'll leave her.
is because, yeah, or leave her. That's key. That's not just choose her every day, no matter what. No, it's choose her every day or get out,
Yeah.
leave. Like it reminds men, this is your choice. I've been married, I've been with my wife for 10 years. And Xavier, we have had some exceedingly difficult decisions to make that we have not been on the same side of over these 10 years. We've had 3 cross-country moves since the pandemic. Each one of those moves, one of us didn't want that move. The other did, and
Yeah.
one of us didn't. Now we ultimately decided together we'd do it, but it's still, one of us still would have not made the move, just as one example. But boy, man, and whenever that decision, um, like just this example, to make one of these moves, it's not easy. We get frustrated. One of us is like, I hate it here. I'm struggling. This is hard. From just speaking for myself, I am always, always owning that I made this choice. My wife
Hmm.
didn't make me do anything. I'm my own man. I'm choosing all of this. I'm choosing everything about my wife. She's human. We're all human. She's any man enters into relationship, he's entering into relationship not with a fantasy, but with a human,
Yeah.
right? And I think there's so much power in owning that I'm choosing this. I think the ultimate liberation, in fact, is owning that I'm choosing this.
Yeah.
A lot of guys will run away from relationship, not because they're making a choice, but because their wounds are running the show.
Hmm.
Their little boy, their little adolescent boy that doesn't want to grow up and have any responsibility is like, I can't do this. I don't feel free. You're trapping me. You're taking me away from my mission, whatever the hell that is.
Yeah.
And so we run away, and then we're single and like, oh, maybe we feel a moment of relief. But then we start looking around and going, man, I'm lonely. Where's a
Yeah.
woman to light me up? You know, I, I
Yeah.
I spent one relationship leaving and going back over 5 years. I don't know how many times I did that, 50 times maybe. And because that was the pattern. I would feel trapped by the relationship because I didn't know how to be skillful in it. So I'd
Yeah.
be trapped. I'd be like, I got to get out of here. I'd run, get a breather. Like, oh, okay. Oh,
I'm ready
that
for
freedom,
round two.
that freedom feels good, man. She's still cute though. We got a thing. Let me go back. I got this now.
Yeah.
Go back. Wait a week. Oh, I'm trapped. I don't know if I can. I did that so many times, man. There's no freedom in that.
Yeah.
That's not freedom. That's just that's just a different flavor of prison.
Yeah. And what you say there is really potent. It's like in our efforts to avoid um the work that real intimacy requires, we are not actually free to love.
No.
And in the depth of my avoidant tendencies and hyper independent patterns, I was like, yeah, I can
Yeah.
retract, and I can have
Uh-huh.
that shadow version of freedom, which is I don't need anybody. No one can
Right.
poke my heart, and at the same time, oh, I am not free to love. It's like love scares
Yeah.
the living shit out of me. And
Yeah.
how can a guy work with the difference between pride and spine? Because for
Mm.
myself
Mm.
specifically, I've had, and I continue to do that. We've been together in this relationship for I think 10 years now. I mean, in October it's going to be 11 years, and I continuously have to find my spine and soften my pride, which is the masculine pride,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
I don't need you.
Yeah.
I hate that I want to be here. It's
Mm.
that pride is there. How
That's
can
it.
a guy work with that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting distinction. I think on some level, I think it's a very natural and healthy response to want to maintain my pride, and because pride, I think in its basic is just self-respect. I respect myself, and I think that that's vital. We men have to be in our lives in ways that we can respect ourselves. I think at the core of a lot of men's suffering is we're showing up in ways where we don't respect ourselves. We're saying yes to jobs, to even relationships, or to ways of communicating. We're saying yes to those things when they don't work for us. We're selling ourselves out in countless ways. So I think I want to acknowledge that that's important. We men have to show up in ways where we can respect ourselves. I think pride. What's really interesting is you're asking that question. I don't really work with that word very much. It's not a word that I talk about very much, right? I think I wonder, and you help me understand what you're getting at. Pride is a form of putting up a wall,
Yeah.
right?
In its shadowy form, it's like, I'm not gonna humble myself enough to look at my own
Mm, yeah,
contribution to this
right.
dysfunction. I'm kind of
Yeah.
like above and beyond,
Yeah.
like reproach in this
Yeah.
situation. It's almost
Yeah.
like a false self-inflation. Just like
Yeah.
it would be so much easier if I didn't have to deal with this shit. And I try to
Yeah.
put myself above all of that crap. I feel like that tendency in the masculine realm
Mm,
can be present to um it's like there's real self-respect, a healthy self-respect, which is I'm not going to tolerate some behaviors that
yeah.
are
Yeah.
not
Mhm.
in line with who I know myself to be and what I know I am worthy of. And then sometimes this sometimes false sense of pride, maybe, where we want to bring ourselves above
Yeah.
whatever
Well, I
humbling
hear
is
you.
needed to meet our pain and our wounding and our shadowy
Yeah.
ways.
Well, here's a way that I think I work with that regularly, where I don't take it head on. I don't think you can take pride head on. I mean, that's exactly what pride is a defense against. It doesn't want to
Yeah,
be. I don't want. There's something I'm protecting for, something that doesn't want to be taken head on.
yeah,
One of the ways that I think get around that pretty easily is I especially when I work with couples in relationship work, I ban the words right and wrong. I
okay.
don't allow those words because they just invite argument. Who's right, who's wrong. And in fact, I think those words only serve pride.
Hmm.
I'm not wrong. And sort of this prideful, of course, I've thought about this. There's sort of just this
Like self-righteousness.
self-righteousness. Exactly. So I ban those words. And instead, we use words like skillful and unskillful,
Hmm.
helpful, unhelpful, connecting. disconnecting, right? So take, for example, okay, I've done something, my partner's upset about it, and my pride might have me say, not my fault. I didn't do it. I had good intentions. If you can't see that, it's not my problem.
It's on you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a stance that I know well, throughout my life. Well, you know, what is easy to say is easy to see is is the stance that I'm taking, is this helpful? Is this helping my wife feel more connected? Is this helping me feel more connected? Is this serving our relationship? Is what I'm doing skillful or unskillful? Like, it's easy to look at that and go, you know what? Yeah, we're in a shit show right now. And I
Yeah.
know I'm 50% of that shit show. I could blame it on her, but that's not helpful. Even if I'm right, doesn't fucking matter. What's going on isn't helpful.
Yeah.
So, that is something that, at least for me personally, and a lot of the men I work with, I think that helps us immediately get beneath the prideful, I'm right, I'm not wrong in this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's often maybe true. Maybe I am right. But who cares if my relationship is in chaos?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who cares if I'm right? What difference does that make? What do I think I win by
Yeah.
being right? Right? I think every man needs to, speaking in relationships, I think every man has got to be clear on what is his vision for this relationship. What's his purpose? Why is he doing relationship at all? Because, I know that I'm doing relationship to create something beautiful with my wife. And if
Yeah.
something beautiful isn't being created, I can blame that on her, but that just makes me powerless. I have no power if I give her all the responsibility for why things are not working. I
Mm-hmm.
literally turn myself into a victim.
Yeah.
Rather, I can look and go, okay, what am I doing that's not helpful? Right? Oh, you know what? One thing I realize I'm doing is I'm being a little stingy with my praise. Okay, I can, take a deep breath, soften that, and say I'm being stingy. Even just saying that to her, babe, I realize I've been being stingy with my praise and I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That right there, right? I know immediately that that's going to get a good response from her. She's going to appreciate that. Right? And I don't even have to take on my pride. I'm just asking a question, is what I'm doing helpful? No, it's not. It's not helpful. Right? So I think that's a way that like changing up language
Yeah.
so that I take the righteousness out of it and I'm really looking at what's the impact of of what am I seeing in front of me, and is it in alignment with the vision I want? And if it's not, okay, what can I do to maybe create a different outcome?
Yeah. And what would you say to the guy who is feeling chronically unseen in his relationship, and he probably is on the other side of that polarity? He feels unacknowledged, unseen, and is under the impression that there is not much that he can do um, to receive a degree of appreciation that he craves. What would you say to a guy who is in that situation?
Well, at first, I'd have more questions. I'd want
Yeah.
to understand a bit more what he's actually experiencing. But just a quick diagnosis is, my guess would be that he's not. He either isn't advocating for his needs, or he doesn't even know what his needs are. So
Yeah.
many guys, we're so disconnected from our needs. We don't feel like even having needs is a weakness for a lot of men. And
Yes.
so, the need to be appreciated. If my wife or my partner isn't appreciating me enough, well, what's my part in that? Am I communicating that that's a need that I have? And am I communicating it in a skillful way?
Hmm.
Right? Probably the answers are going to be no to those questions. Right? No, I either am not really telling her, or maybe I told her 5 years ago, or she should just know,
Yeah.
she should just appreciate me. Well, maybe, but she's not. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You know? And people, I think one of the big myths of relationship too is that I should just have to say something once
Yeah.
and you get it. Wrong. Not how it works. my wife, we've been together 10 years. It's taken me especially, but her too in her own way, but me, it's taken me years to really understand some of her boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
some of her sensitivities. Years. And we've had to, because it's always little changing, this is like moving targets, and life is complex, man. I think I understand something, and then, but it happens a little bit like this, and I get it wrong. And, and she has to call it out to my attention. I'm like, but babe, I didn't see the connection. Anyway, I tell couples, expect it to take 10 years
Yeah.
to get really good at being with each other. And that's when that's when you're trying to be really, expect it to take 10 years. Not because it will take 10 years, but it will take years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not in for that, you probably shouldn't be in that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. There is something that I've seen recently between maybe um, a difference, if I'm going to put it that way, between truly being emotionally available and the guy who is performative,
Mm,
performatively doing the work. I see
yeah.
I mean I've had some guys coming and wanting to do some work just because they are tired of being berated or being
Uh-huh.
told by a lover that you should look into this, you should do this, you should. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, I just wanted to speak a little bit to that
Uh,
because on one end there is the spiritual guy who gets seduced by all this material around personal expansion and all of that, and performatively trying to lean in there because it looks like the next cool ladder to climb.
mm,
um and then there is truly opening up for real intimacy.
yeah.
And yeah, I wonder if you have something to say
Yeah.
on this, because I've seen that tendency, and sometimes within myself I've seen that where it can be a little performative
Oh,
and
yeah.
not so embodied, and I have to call myself back to the body many times.
Xavier, when I was, how old was I? I think I was maybe, I don't know, 33 or 34. I'd been dating a woman for probably already 2 years by now. And we were chaos. Our relationship was chaos. And I was studying, though, a lot of spirituality. I had this book, this beautiful book, about the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah,
It was this soft cover book, with all those beautiful wisdom sayings like the master does nothing yet leaves nothing undone.
yeah,
Those kinds of. It was a beautiful book, and I remember it was had a soft cover, had this beautiful bamboo drawing on it, and I loved it so much. And I got into a fight with that girlfriend. We fought every 3 days. And I remember she picked up that book and right in front of my face, shredded the cover, like just
mm,
ripped it, like as her way of saying, go, you and your spirituality, go fuck yourself.
yeah.
And it was like, I was like, what are you doing?
You just stole my Bible.
And it was one of the greatest gifts a woman has ever given me. It was not a skillful way of giving it to me, but it is a lesson that has never left me. It's like, it doesn't matter how much I know in my brain, how smart I am, how articulate I may be. And I had to, learn this lesson again with my wife when I finally met her. And she broke up with me 4 months into our relationship because
Mm,
I was running into my stuff, man. It was coming all, it was all coming up. And it really landed for me that, like, it doesn't matter what I know in my brain if I can't connect to my heart. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't. If I want to be in relationship with someone, relating to someone, connected,
mm-hmm.
I'm a very intellectual guy. I take after my father and my mother that way, for that matter. They're both very intellectual people, which is why they divorced when I was 4, because my parents divorced when I was 4 because they're too similar. They're both
Yeah.
brainiacs. They're smart intellectuals, and they hated each other. And who did
Mm,
they choose? Complete non-intellectuals, people that are so, connected. In my dad's case, this woman connected this sort of this mystical realm. And in my mom's case, this dog loving, earthy, works with his hands guy. Like, they needed that in their lives. And what did
yeah.
I choose? But, my wife, Sylvie, she is like, oh my God, man. She's like, I remember the first time I met her, the way I describe it is like someone pushed me off a cliff into the deepest ocean. I just fell into her waters. I was like, whoa, just swimming in her emotionality.
Yeah.
And, she was someone that in order to be with her, I had to learn to get out of my damn head and connect in my body. And again, one of the ways that I do that is just by asking the question, all right, is the way that I'm showing up, is this helping us? Like, am I noticing that she's feeling good with me right now, or am I noticing that she's not feeling good with me right now?
Yeah.
Not that it's all my responsibility. She has her part to play, but I got mine. And,
Yeah.
that's a question that really helps get me out of my head often,
Yeah.
because I can get wrapped up in righteousness there.
Yeah.
I'm a smart guy, I'm a smart dude. I know shit. And that is a great strength, but it's also a profound weakness.
Yeah. Yeah. There are two things I want to
Yeah.
touch on in what you shared, and I hope I don't forget any of them. So I'm just going to name them both, and we're going to start with
Yeah,
one.
great. Sure.
One thing is the, repair,
Yeah.
because you've talked about, your wife breaking up with you after 4 months into the relationship,
Mm.
and what, let's say I'm a guy who sucks at repair and I
Yeah.
want to get better at it. The relationship
Yeah.
matters. I know I love this woman,
Yeah.
and I just suck at repair.
Yeah.
What would it look like for me to begin to work my way there?
Well, I teach I have a program called Elevate Your Relationship, where I teach men
Yeah.
how to do repair. It's, you know, in one sense, I think this is true of a lot of relationship stuff, is it's pretty simple, but it's not easy.
Yes.
I think a lot of relationship is really simple. It's just not easy. And it's only not easy because we're not taught. We don't know the skills. There's childhood wounding. There's programs that we're running in our brain that get in the way. There's also, uh, you know, we choose a partner not because they're the same as us, but because they're beautifully different,
Yeah.
right? So we choose that, but then we go to war with it because it's different, right? So again, if we're not conscious of that. So, there's a lot of stuff that a lot of layers to work through, but I teach a 4-step process of repair. I call it the 4 S's, and the first S is see. You got to see the pattern. First, just notice. Look, what are you doing that's not working? I used to, when I would get into an argument, Xavier, I would cross my arms and turn my
Yeah.
body. Right? I would do that. I'm defending myself. I'm I'm going up into my head. I'm not I'm this isn't a helpful stance. My partner feels that. She can feel, okay, he's not available. Yeah, may not be consciously thinking it, but her nervous system is picking up on my closure, on my defensive posture. Right? So when I saw that, like the first step, see. Oh, okay. Well, the second step is stop. Stop doing the thing that's not helpful. Again, like, is it right or wrong to close my arms and do this? It's not right or wrong. What difference does that make? But it's not helpful. That's a fact. That's inarguable. This is not helping. Right? My wife can feel my defensive. I can feel my defensive posture now that I see it. Right? So stop. That's the second step. Stop. And what that looked like for me is drop my arms, face her, and take a breath. Right? Now, immediately, I'm more available to her, just on a very nervous system level, right? I'm more available. Taking a deep breath. And the third step is soothe, right? So see, stop, soothe. And now soothe, that's where so many of us just lack any skill. We don't know how to soothe. We don't know how to soothe ourselves. We don't know how to soothe them. There's all kinds of tools, everything from, sometimes may need to just I need a 20-minute break. I'm triggered. I'm angry. I feel defensive. I know that I can't get to where I need to be if I stay in this. So I need to cool down, right? I, I need to go soothe myself, because she can't soothe me and I can't soothe me while we're in this conversation, right? So, and I'll say that, right? Sometimes it's just, babe, I need 20 minutes. I need to cool down, right? But I don't keep arguing. We don't keep trying to solve the thing. We're not going to. It's only going to get worse. Um, so that's the step three. There's other tools I can use. I teach a practice called language needles. These are like think of acupuncture. They're like sentences that I can put into her listening that will help soothe her. Right. For example, my wife telling her things like, "Babe, your feelings matter to me. Your feelings matter to me. We'll get through this together. I'm committed to finding our way together." Those are little sentences that my wife, when she hears them, her nervous system goes, okay, he's with me. Whereas in the past, what I might say is, "Man, you're making shit up. This is not even a thing."
Yeah.
Right? You crazy? You crazy woman? The fuck you talking about? You know, those are not language needles. Those are, verbal punches to the head. Those
Yeah.
don't help her feel safe. They're not,
Yeah.
again, even if
Emotional
I'm right,
uppercuts.
even if I'm right, Xavier, even if I'm right, she's making this up. This thing didn't happen the way that she thinks it did. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not helpful to say that. It's not helpful, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's when you see that, the normal thing I say is, "Oh, you're making that up." Oh my God, I see it now. Okay, stop. Just don't say it. Better just say nothing. It's so funny, man. When I start working with guys on this stuff, sometimes guys will say, "I got into an argument last night and it almost went sideways, but all I did is I just didn't say anything when I normally would say something, and
Hmm.
she just talked for another 60 seconds and then said, 'Thank you.'" And, it's like, I don't even know what happened, but she's thanking me now, and I'm not even sure what just happened. All that happened is I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
She's like, "Well, sometimes, yeah, she
Yeah.
doesn't need you to solve her problems. She definitely doesn't need you to dismiss her feelings or her experience. Your
Yeah.
silence, maybe just let her speak into it." And that's all she needed, right? That
Undisturbed
space.
space to just voice what was there.
Exactly. And so, that third step, man, soothe, that's where the magic is.
Yeah.
And that's what most people skip because we don't know. We don't know how to soothe our partners. We don't even know how to soothe ourselves in healthy
Yeah.
ways. Right. But that third step is vital. And that,
Yeah.
maybe there's an apology. Is not always. There's not always apologies necessary, but that, apology can be soothing. But again, have you ever apologized, Xavier, where you're not really apologizing? You're just like,
Oh, absolutely.
"Oh, okay, I'm sorry."
Like, fine, I'll give it to you.
Exactly, like, "Whatever, I'm sorry," or
Yeah.
what. That's not at all soothing. In fact,
No.
that's only more frustrating, right? So, again, repair is a skill. It is a skill and it has to be practiced.
Yeah.
Most of us didn't see our parents repair well, so we don't
Mm.
have good models for it. I have great empathy for all of us, especially men in relationship. Nobody prepared us to do this well, right? But we live in a time when we can learn, man.
Yeah.
The internet, we can learn skills. We can come to work with coaches, and it can be learned. I'm a perfect example. I was a disaster with women in my 30s, like well intentioned, and I was the worst boyfriend you could have because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but I
Yeah.
thought I did. I thought I knew,
Yeah.
but I didn't know. And
Yeah.
now I have a great marriage, man. My wife and I, we've been through some hard times just circumstantially, but we're so good with each other, man. We're connected, we communicate, we make love, we're as tight as I could have ever imagined being with a woman.
I just love everything you share coming from lived experience. I love receiving that.
Mm,
And also what I'm hearing you say in all of that, which is, the other point that I wanted to bring across came
mm,
back.
yeah.
Like what I hear you saying is embracing the fact that it is also our responsibility. I mean, it's a shared responsibility. Um, but I think men have a great impact in the capacity to provide emotional safety. It's like a different form of provision, but a provision that I see is
Mm,
in, increasingly essential in modern relationships because a woman
yeah.
can provide for herself financially right now. It's like, you know,
Hmm.
um, but I think relationally, there are some things that can we get to learn how to provide for each other,
Mm.
and things that probably we
Yeah,
disregarded in the past. And
yeah.
what's your take on this?
Well, that word safety, you use the word safety. That is a word that does not get used enough in the context of relationships.
Hmm.
I think most men, we orient around the word safe. Is there any physical threat? If no, then we're safe. Like that's the only criteria we have for safety is am I beating her or cheating on her? And even cheating is like, wow, it's not a physical danger. I'm not
Yeah,
hitting her, so she's safe. That's uh again not a helpful orientation.
yeah.
A lot of men will get the feedback. I don't feel, they'll hear from their partner, I don't feel safe with you. And he'll be like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's not even a thing. and and on top of that, so many men do not feel safe to be themselves, to say what's true for them, to speak their desires, but they would never be able to admit it.
How essential do you think? Because I've seen that so much, like in during episodes of my the relationship I'm currently inside of, and
Yeah.
I'm like, damn it, like it's like the sacred fuck. What?
Mm.
I don't
No.
feel safe to fully express this aspect
Yeah.
of myself in
Yeah.
this moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
humbling at times, humbling to name that, to
Mm.
admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I mean, I've got a guy in one of my group programs right now that is, you know, his wife talks to him in ways that are deeply, deeply harmful. And that's one of the things he's navigating is how to advocate for himself
Yes.
because he doesn't feel safe, man. This is like we start to walk on eggshells, and this is mutual. I mean, this is the healthiest couples are regularly in a conversation of how can I help the other person feel more safe to be
Yes.
themselves, to you, every relationship has to have some boundaries. I mean, it's not a relationship if there are no boundaries. I don't even know what you'd call that, but it's not a
Yeah.
relationship, right? Relationships, they have limits, they have boundaries, they have agreements. And um oftentimes, humans are messy. We may there may be a part of us that wants to operate outside of an agreement. I think it's important that we can talk about that in a way that we don't get shamed for it.
Yeah.
It's one thing to act on, to break agreements. Now, that's a whole other conversation we're having. But relationships are messy. And I think where a lot of people, especially men, we shut down. Women do this too. But I think men, we shut down because we're afraid of hurting her in
Mm-hmm.
some way,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, not physically, but emotionally. Like we've been taught as men that the number one prime directive is don't hurt a woman, don't hurt a
Yes.
girl. That's what I grew up with. I got 3 sisters, man. That's what I'm above and beyond anything else, don't hurt a girl.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say this thing and she's gonna get hurt, can't do it,
Yeah.
right? And it might hurt, right? So, we have to learn though how to be with the hurt. I've
Yeah.
had to learn how to say the thing in a skillful way that maybe my wife doesn't wanna hear,
Mm-hmm.
but I know if I don't say it, I I'm gonna shut down. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
gonna be able to show up as my best self. And so I think this is a skill that we've got to learn and both partners, my wife has had to learn. This happened early in our relationship where I remember her telling me, and a lot of guys had this experience. She's like, I welcome your truth.
Yeah.
And then one day, Xavier, I told her a truth and she lost her fucking mind, which caused me to lose my fucking mind.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's
Yeah.
like, woman, one of my close friends actually put it really well. It's like what he learned is, from his parents, they would say, the subconscious message was always tell us the truth and we won't be able to handle it. Right.
That was
Oh,
honest.
is all well, they didn't use that language. The,
Yeah.
the the thing they said was always tell us the truth. But what they demonstrated was we can't handle it.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
many of the women I've dated, it's the same thing. Always tell me the truth, but I won't be able to handle it. Well, that's paralyzing for a guy. What the hell am I supposed to do inside of that? Right? So it's a whole, eh, that's why, man, that's why I tell couples expect it to take years to navigate these things. You aren't going to figure this out overnight. You're going to have these mixed messages but you've got to be in an open dialogue. You got to be willing to say, you know what? I told you something that was true for me, and you reacted in a way that did not make me feel safe to tell you the truth. How can we got to work on this? I'm not saying you have to work on it. Maybe I can say things in a different way. Maybe there are some things you don't really want to hear from me. That's also why having a men's group is so helpful. There are things I can say in my men's group, Xavier, that I will never say to my wife because I know it would not serve her to hear them. I don't believe in radical honesty in relationships. I don't believe in that. I don't. It's why, having a therapist, having a men's group, having close, trustable friends that I know they have my back, but they also have my wife's back, right? I can vent to them, but I can vent to them in a way that they'll hear it, they'll hold it, and they're not going to give me stupid advice.
And they are discerning.
They're discerning. Exactly, man. So, man, relationship takes time. It just
Yeah.
takes time, and I think we have this belief that it just should all be great from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's not a real thing.
I
I
love
don't
this
think.
so much because it just brings the relationship, it takes it away from the fairy tale fantasy land, and it brings it
Yeah,
back to the ground and to the heart. And
yeah.
there are two questions that I would love to use to basically conclude our
Mm,
this conversation. I'm so grateful that you are so generous with every answer. And the first one is, how can we just break the blame loop that
look,
often happens within couples? It's like, you did this, therefore, and then I did, and the other person retaliating with the same
yeah,
kind of language.
yeah,
It's like we have these blame loops that are never ending. um yeah, how can we exit the blame loops? And I think I've read that in one of your pieces. It's to each person taking, it's not 50-50, it's like 100, 100, 100,
yeah,
in terms of responsibility. What's your
yeah.
take on that?
Yeah, I don't believe in 50-50 relationships. I believe relationships are 100-100. Each
Mm-hmm.
person has 100% responsibility for the quality, the state, the depth, all of that of the relationship. 100%
Yeah.
responsibility. I have 100% responsibility. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge, to own, right? It doesn't mean that I'm responsible for my wife's behavior. I mean, she's
Mm-hmm.
an adult. She's still responsible. She has her 100%. But the moment I'm over here looking at her hey, you're not doing this, you need to do that. Well, I'm not owning my 100% anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm in her business now. I don't believe that two adults telling each other what to do is a successful, is a healthy way of doing relationship. I think that's, I think relationships, uh, they 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 become unfun when you have either partner telling the other what you should do to make things better.
Yeah.
Not a winning strategy.
Almost like
Rather,
parenting the other one.
exactly, or coaching the other, or being the
Yeah.
therapist of the other. It's never helpful. Now there's other ways to do that, to give feedback, right? There's a whole other way of communicating, because you do have to talk about stuff, right? But the other part of that I wanted to speak to is, um, I'm also, um, I like to formulate relationship as a we, like
Yeah.
it's a third entity. There's a we that we're both responsible for. Look, I'm here, you're here, but there's this other thing called a relationship that's here. Right?
Yeah.
And like, Dr. Stan Takin points out beautifully, like, what is the relationship? You can't see it. Tell me where your relationship is. How do you point to it? Point to your relationship. What do you point at? Is it exists in our minds.
Yeah.
It's in the agreements that we both honor. And so I it just doesn't serve It's just not helpful to focus on what the other person is doing that's messing things up. It's again, even if you're right,
Yeah.
it's not helpful. It's never helpful. Rather, what is helpful is to say, man, I'm feeling really tender.
Yeah.
That the conversation we had the other day, or the thing that you said to me, kind of fucked me up in a way. It's I didn't really like the way you delivered that. That didn't feel good to me. Okay. I'm focusing on I'm taking ownership of my 100%, which is to speak up.
Hmm.
It's one of the things that many of us don't do in relationships is we don't speak up, right? And when we don't speak up, then we don't show up.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn how to speak up, but we got to do it skillfully. I'll leave that there.
I love that. Well, the other question, one of the last I'll ask you is, um, I spent the biggest part of last year writing this book called Scars of Gold. It will
Mm,
it will come out later this year in September.
mm,
And every guest that I have on the show, I basically bring this question. When it comes to, I mean, you can direct the question in all the ways that feel meaningful, whether it's relationally or
mm,
not.
mm,
But the point is, what is a wound that you experienced that became a scar of gold? And
mm,
by that I mean it opened the door to a new
mm.
journey that led you to brightness you didn't know you had,
Yeah.
you didn't know was available. Is there any of that you have?
Man, I mean, yeah, every relationship in my 20s and 30s, man. I by the time I was 36, man, I was beaten up. So I was in so much pain around my relationships to women. I mean, just I was married to a French woman in France that was again for 8 months, just left me utterly, utterly brokenhearted, devastated, even kicked out of my home. At like just 27, 28 years old. I lived with a woman off and on for 5 years in my early 30s that I shared with you. It was just chaos, man, and we abused each other. It was just I was just by the time I was 36, man, I was just like, I was just pulp. I was beaten by relationship. But I made a fateful decision, and the decision was I am not I'm not gonna suck at relationships for the rest of my life. I refuse. I can't. I just can't because I'm a relationship guy. I want to be in a relationship, but damn, I'm missing something. And that led me on a path that, man, the work that I do today, I get to help men. Well, it's one of my greatest gifts, I think, is to myself. I get to help men not make the mistakes, or at least repair from the mistakes that I made throughout my 20s and 30s. I often feel like I'm doing penance in a way. My book Choose for Everyday or Leave Her, man, I've sold, for an independent author, I've sold like 14,000 copies of that. Half the men that come into my programs have read that book. Uh Many of them got handed that book to them by their wives or their spouses. Um I feel like every time I get to work with a group of guys, I do a lot of sessions each month, group sessions with men just focused on relationship stuff. I feel like, man, I have gold. Even I use that metaphor. I love your title, Scars of Gold. I used to think that 5-year relationship, when I got out of it, I was like, what a pile of shit that was. What a shitty just pile of insanity that was. But as I really spend time studying it, examining it, learning the lessons, seeing all the things that I got wrong, that I didn't understand, oh man, that became a mountain of gold, that I'm mining, that I can now pass on to other men and be like, yo, I understand you. I get it. I know why that's painful. And let's come at it a different way. You can shift this. You don't have to keep making that same mistake that I know I made it many times. I understand the temptation. There's another way. That, man, is gold.
Yeah, I love that so much, and the heart that you're putting into your work. Even as you answered that question, it was, you know,
Mm,
I feel it.
mm.
It's like I sense it. Um, thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Now, this will depend on your generosity with your time. As you were speaking, there was one last question that emerged,
Let's
and
have it. Let's have it. Let's have it.
okay. The question is this, and I want it to be as simple, tiny, as practical as possible. What is one thing that if women understood more about men, it would make their relationship easier, and vice
Ooh.
versa? What is one small thing that if men understood about women, it would make their relationships easier?
So, like in both directions?
Yeah.
Well, and thank you for the invitation to brevity. I know my answers can be long. It's nuance, man. I love
It can
nuance.
be as long as you want. I will receive it. I don't. You know. I just want to be very mindful of your generosity with your
Yeah.
time.
Well, just a couple short things. Men, we need to understand that women are not defective versions of men.
Yeah.
And women need to understand that men are not defective versions of women.
Oh man.
We're different. We are
Yes.
different. My wife and I are wildly different. And some of the times those differences boggle our freaking minds. Like, we literally inhabit different universes.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I'm all for equality, but sameness, nope.
Yeah.
No. Now, there may be some women that identify with things that men identify with. I'm not saying all women are like this and all men are like that. I don't subscribe to that, but we are different.
Yeah.
And those differences need to be honored,
Yes.
not dismissed.
Yeah.
I mean, again, that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down, but I'll just leave it
Oh
at
man, that's freaking awesome.
yeah.
That is really the one of the, I don't know, the depth of wisdom it came from. I celebrate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, I just want to open up the space to honor your work. It's like you have many books. Um the last one I might be butcher. I'm trying to remember fully. It's like,
Tell the truth, let the peace fall where it may.
yes, tell the
Yeah, that
truth,
was
let
that
the
was my
peaceful
that was my
made
first
where
book.
it may.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
one I read the the one that you have just right there. Choose her daily or leave her, and
Choose
that
her
for
every
me
day
was,
or leave her, yeah.
yeah, and that was a
Awesome,
beautiful
man.
slap in the face.
Yeah, good, that's what it was intended to be.
Yeah, how can men get into
Yeah.
your universe and get into your work and, yeah,
Yeah.
begin this journey with you?
My book is a really good place to start, like, especially if you're a guy that wants to be good in relationship and just you struggle with it. That's a really great place to get to kinda learn learn for yourself through my journey in many
Yeah,
ways. Like, I incorporate a lot of the things that I work with clients in there, but a lot of it's just from my stories, from my own, the things that I did that I've turned them into teaching stories.
yeah,
So that's a really great place. Choose her every day or leave her. Get that book. I have it on Audible as well. It's available, the audiobook. Um, if you want to dive in and work with me, there are ways to do that. My website, Bryan Reeves, it's Bryan with a Y. That's important. Bryan with a Y. If you go to Bryan with an I, Reeves, I think you go down someone did the family tree of the Reeves, the lineage. It'll have nothing to do with me, really.
yeah,
So Bryan with a Y, Reeves.com. But yeah, man, I think my book, even, I'm on Instagram, I'm on all the socials, but my book is really the best place, I think, to start.
yeah. Yeah. So, brother, I'm
Thank you.
to I just want to say with an open heart, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for opening your heart. I deeply
Thank you. Thank you.
appreciate it. And to everyone listening to this, please rush over to the book, rush over to Bryan's work, and I it will leave you with a heart open a little bit wider. That's what my experience of your writing, of your blog, of your book has been. And yeah, thank you so much.